Greetings and welcome to this presentation of our CSCW paper, Working for the Invisible Machines or Pumping Information into an Empty Void, an exploration of Wikidata contributors' motivations. My name is Charles. I'm a PhD candidate at Brooklyn, University of Minnesota. Today, I'm going to present this paper along with my co-first author, colleague, Mo. So here is the outline of this presentation. So first, I will give a brief introduction of Wikidata, what it does, and what's its basic characteristics. And then I will talk about the motivations for conducting this piece of research, as well as what is our approach and research methods. The rest of this presentation will focus on one of the major findings of this project, which is the two major archetypes we observed. Then my co-author will take over and introduce these two archetypes using more concrete examples. So a glimpse of Wikidata. Wikidata serves as a central knowledge base for Wikimedia projects. As a structured data platform, it not only provides data support for various wiki projects like Wikipedia, Wikivoyage, and Wikibooks, but also it is connected to external databases like the Library of Congress. The major components of Wikidata are items and properties, where real-world entities like locations and humans, and also in this figure, the example Earth, are represented in Wikidata as items. Their characteristics, such as the birthday of a person, the release date of the movie or album, are modeled as properties and are stored as the property value pairs in Wikidata to describe the item. The motivation of conducting this research is that we would like to understand different kinds of work that Wikidata editors could take on, and what factors motivate them to contribute to different components of Wikidata. Specifically, we would like to observe any pattern and findings that are correlated with structured data, which is the unique pattern of this peer production platform. In terms of methods, we recruited 15 Wikidata editors through project chat and editor talk page, and then we conducted one-to-one semi-structured interviews with them. After we get the transcripts, we analyze the data using inductive semantic analysis. So here is our major finding about editor roles. While we are performing the inductive semantic analysis, we observe from the data that the motivation and work pattern start to diverge into two different archetypes. Each archetype, while having some common characteristics, contribute differently to Wikidata, which motivated by different reasons. We decided to name the two archetypes Mason and Architects, in the sense that the architects lay out the foundation of the ontological infrastructure of Wikidata, define how things being modeled and represented in Wikidata, while Masons, at the same time, build the database through data entry and editing. My colleague Mo will elaborate the two archetypes in detail using concrete examples.
All right, so Charles just introduced us to these two groups of people, architects and masons, who do completely different types of work on Wikidata. And what I want to do is paint a picture of who some of these people might be to give us an understanding of why certain Wikidata editors end up being architects versus end up being masons. And the way I want to do this is by focusing on two of our participants, P3, who's an architect, and P10, who's a mason. And these quotes really represent a common thread or common threads that went through our interviews with each of them. So P3, important thing to know about her is she's a recent retiree who's really engaged in her career and was really concerned that she might get bored being retired. And that's kind of the energy that she brings to Wikidata. P10, on the other hand, is a father. He has young children. He has a full-time job and a career. And so energy isn't always available when he's doing his Wikidata editing. And so one of the ways in which this causes them to differ is in the level of cognitive effort that they want to expend. P3 actively wants to keep her brain engaged, wants to keep learning new things, whereas for P10, Wikidata is something that he can just add a few bits of information to without having to think about it a lot. And this affects, obviously, what kind of tasks they gravitate towards on the platform. Another dimension where they differ is on preference for collaboration. P3 loves working together with other people. This is something that she misses from her career. P10, on the other hand, just wants a solitary activity to do at the end of the day. He is happy to just tinker in his own little corner and do his own little thing, and actively doesn't want to engage with the community. And finally, domain expertise. P3 is an expert on clothing and textiles, and those are the kinds of items that she works on. And this makes sense because when you're developing an ontological infrastructure, when you're deciding what kinds of information to capture about the type of item you're working on, you need to have a very deep understanding of the domain. So you need to know, what information is actually important to capture about a textile versus, say, a painting. And that's not something that you can do if you just have passing knowledge. Whereas for Masons, the tasks that they gravitate towards typically require less thought and also require less expertise. And so even if they start in an area where they're experts, so P10 is a biologist and he started editing items in his area of expertise, but then he branched out. And as he says, sometimes you end up just going down rabbit holes, and this was very common amongst our Masons. So one of the key similarities, these are a bunch of ways in which they were different. One of the key similarities is that both Masons and architects really appreciated structured data. And this is no surprise because they're on Wikidata. They're editing Wikidata as opposed to, say, Wikipedia, for example. And the reasons for that were things like, this is just how my mind works, or I enjoy categorizing things. But one of the key differences and one of the additional motivations for Masons was this idea that structured data makes tasks more accomplishable, that it provides a configuration where architects can do a lot of the intellectual kind of heavy lifting and the laying the groundwork and creating the blueprints, and Masons then get these tasks that are a lot more accomplishable, but they're still very valuable and that contribute knowledge in ways that they think are important. And this quote from P3 really highlights this. He says, he's not motivated to start a video game and finish it, or start a book and then finish it. He beats himself up. But with tasks on Wikidata, they're all very accomplishable. It's a task that makes me feel like I'm doing something good. Now, we have a bunch of interesting design implications based on these findings, but for that, I will invite you to read our paper. And if you have any questions or would just like to chat about our work, please feel free to reach out to Charles or myself. And with that, I will say thank you for watching our presentation.